Welcome to the Data Hall YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we are going to discuss data frames in R. So we are going to focus on how do we work with data frames. That is, how do we create a data frame, how do we access data from a data frame, or how do we assign names or assign different functions or work with different functions with regards to data frames. So this video is going to be all about data frames. So let's start with the idea of creating a data frame. So what we do is we take this function, which is data.frame, and this function, what this function does is that it creates a data frame. So within this function, we are going to do two things. First is the name of the column that we are going to create. So we can skip the column names, but it's a good idea to have column names. So first thing is we would give the column names. So in this case, I have the first name, last name, and ages of different players. So this is the name of the column, which would be first F name, and it would contain these three values. That would be the first name of different players. You can see how we have used C concatenation or combination to combine these values. Then we would have second column L name, which stands for last name, and we would have these three last names in it. And for each column is separated by a comma. And then we would have a last column, which is age, and that would contain these numeric values. And you can see that how we discussed in our previous videos that matrices or vectors would just contain a single type of data, but data frames are versatile, and each column of it can be a different data type. So this is a character data type. These two first columns are the character data type, but this age is a numerical data type. So each column can be a different data type, but each column would consist of the same type of data. So age would always be numerics, right? So let me press Control Enter, and what that would do is it would create a data frame by the name of full name. So you can see in your environment window, you would have this object called full name, and if you click over here, you can see that there are three columns, the first name, last name, and age, and there are three observations, which are the name of the players and their age. We could have simply accessed the data by, selecting the name of the object and pressing Control Enter. So if you look at the structure of the data using the str, which stands for structure, it would give you the name of each column and its data type. So we know that first name is a character data type, L name, last name is also character, and age is num. It would not give you all the values, but just the starting and ending few values, right? And it would give you an overview of how many observations and how many variables you have in your data frame. You can also summarize your data frame using the summary function. And for the character columns, it would just present the frequency or the length of that. But if it is a numerical column, then it would present other aspects or statistics such as mean and median, etc. Now, in data frames, each column should be of same size. So in this case, if we look at, I have taken the same data over here, but what I did is I removed the last player's age. So we do not have any value over here. Now, the idea is that the data frame should have, each column should have the same length. So if this is of length 3, this is also of length 3, but this is of length 2. And if we press Control Enter, it would give us a row that there are different number of rows. So that is because this age do not have same number of rows. I mean, if you have a missing value, then that should be represented by NA. And if we do that, that would perfectly create a good looking data frame. It would just not have a value, and NA means a missing value in a data frame in R. So there should be equal length vector. But let me just reload this data frame so that we have the data that we want to work with. Now, another way of making this data frame is, let's just say if we had three vectors. So instead of having this whole entering this whole data into this data.frame function, what we can do is we can have these three different vectors, right? So if you are not sure what vector is, do watch our first video on the data structures part 1. Now we can see that we have three vectors over here. We can simply use the same data.frame function and specify the name of the vector, and that will also give us exactly same data frame, right? Because we have saved it into the same object, so it had overwritten the object. Now, if we had a matrix and if we wanted to convert that into a data frame, then data.frame function would not work. Then we need to use as.data.frame. So this as.data.frame would convert a matrix into a data frame, right? So let's just say, let's generate a matrix. Now this matrix would contain 10, the number 1 to 10, and it would have 5 rows, right? And it is a mat matrix. So its name is mat. So we have 2 columns and 5 rows, right? Now, if I want to convert this into a data frame, and now just look at this, this mat over here. Now you can see that a new object had been created in our environment, and that is a data frame. So if you wanted to check, you can check that is .data frame and specify the name of the object, and that would tell us whether it is a data frame or not. But more on that in a while. So how do we access data from a data frame? So this is our data frame. Let me just put that over here in the console, so we can look into the data and access the data. So let's just say if I wanted to access this Stephen over here. Now this is in the first column and first row. So what I can do is I can write the name of the data frame, and then within these bracket signs, I can specify the row number and the column number separated by a comma, and that would give us the first element or the first component. I mean the component that is in the first row and the first column. If you wanted to access this third row and second column, which would be rows, then we would write it like this. If we wanted to access the whole third row, so we would just write 3 in the place of row number, and then after comma we would have nothing, and that would give us the whole third row. If we wanted to access, let's just say, a whole column, we can specify write no number of the row, and then after comma we can write the number of the column that we want to access, and that would access the whole column. In this case, it is curry pollen rows. That is what we get. Now we have seen that we have already given the name to our columns, and it is more easy to access data using names rather than numbers. So let's just say if I wanted to access this whole first column, what I would do is, instead of writing the column number, which is the 1, I would just write the name, but do remember to quote them. So that would access the first column. Similarly, if I wanted the third, let me just get this object over here. So we do not have to scroll. So if I wanted to access the third row and the first column, then that would be Derek, and that would get us the name. And now this is somewhat cumbersome to write. The easier way is to use the $sign. This is exactly same as using brackets. So this full name dollar and then the column name would give would exactly be similar to this line of code. So this would give us the whole column. So if I press Control Enter and if I rerun this command, then you can see that whether you use full name and then within bracket you use the column name, or whether you use the $sign and column name after the name of the data frame, they both would be same. And what about this second line of code where we access the third row, the element in the third row of the first name column? So what we do is we write the data frame, then the $sign and the name of the column, and then use the bracket sign just to specify the row. That would be Derek. We can also create this data frame, but we have already created data frames, but I want to specify, I want to explain this head and tail function. So I'm going to create a data frame we would have, which would be somewhat lengthy. So in these data frames, we just have 3 observations, 3 rows. I want some more data. So let's create 2 columns, C1, C2, and C1 would contain a number 1 to 50. So there would be 50 rows, and then C2 column would contain number 51 to 100. So if I look at this data frame, so we have a lengthy data frame that contain 50 rows. Now the idea is that I want to look into data frame. I want to access the data from the data frame. I want just an overview of this data frame. So one way is obviously to look over here, but there are other ways. So if I just select the data frame name and press Ctrl Enter, it would give us some values. But what if I use this head function and it would just give me top 6 values from that data frame. So just to get a look at how the data looks within this data frame, this is a quick way to looking at the data from a data frame. We can also specify if we wanted some more or less number of rows, we can specify that over here. So I want to look into the top 10 rows in this data frame. We can check the last 6 or last 10 rows using the tail function. Let's assign a row and column names to our data frame. So we have already assigned column names to our data frame, but let me just show you another way if you wanted to just change the column name. So if you look at our full name data frame, we can see that we have these column names. What if we wanted them to be more useful, so to be more descriptive? So let's just say instead of having f_name, let's have first underscore, and that would give us some idea of that it is a first name and last name and an age with the capital A, right? So if we wanted to change the column names or we wanted to assign column names, what we do is we use this column names function, and then within parentheses we write the name of the data frame. And what do we need to assign to this column names of this full data? We need this vector that would contain the names of the columns. So if we do that and we look at this data frame, we can see that the name had been changed, right? We can also assign row names using row names function, and that would be somewhat similar process, and you get the row names. There are other functions that we can play with in a data frame. So let's just say if you wanted to check whether this full name, is it a data frame or not, I can use is.data.frame. So that would check whether this is a data frame or not. So it would just specify a true or false. So it would the result would be a logical argument. We can also check whether a column of a data frame is a character or numerical data type. So we can use is.character. And how do you specify that specific column? So data frame can contain multiple data types. So a full data frame would not have any specific type of data, but each column would have a specific data type. So we need to access the column. So how do we access the column? We have discussed over here that we can use, the easiest way is to use $sign. So we want to check whether this f name a character vector or not. So it gives us false, but the reason is that I had changed the name. So let me just name use the newer name, which is this first underscore, and that would tell us that it is a character vector. Similarly, for age, we can check whether it is a character vector or not, and that would tell us it is a not character vector. Is it a numerical data type? Yes, it is a numerical data type. We can also check the dimension of this data frame, and that would tell us how many rows and columns do we have. We can check the names, so that would give us the column names, or specifically column names or row names. Number of rows can be accessed using nRow function, or number of columns can be accessed using nColumn. But what about the length? So how many observations do we have in this data frame? And now in matrix, we have used this length function to check the number of observations, but you would notice that in Dataframe, it does not give us the number of observations, rather it gives us the number of rows. So the observations should be 9, right? So we have 3 columns and 3 rows, that would be equal to 9 observations. The way around is to use so convert this data frame into a matrix and then check the length. So how do we convert a data frame into a matrix? We use as.matrix function and then specify the name of the data frame. So as that data frame, so this would convert this full name data frame into matrix, and then we check the length of this matrix, and that would give us 9. So I hope that was useful. Now do remember that working with data frame, we usually work with when we work with data science, we are working with data frames. So most of our videos related to how do we create values, how do we change values, how do we create columns, are with the tidyverse package, and the tidyverse package is the easier way of working with data frames. So we would have more videos on data frames, but that would be related to tidyverse rather than the base R method of working with data frames. So thanks for watching this video. Do subscribe the channel and do hit the bell icon.